How would you describe the results?
Well, they've been difficult, there's no doubt about that. But I think within that, there are a couple of points that I've made. One is that in 2021, when we last had these local elections, of course, that was a high water mark. We had the bounce from the COVID vaccine rollout, so it's quite a high bar to be compared with. And the second thing is, I think amongst the results, there are some things that have been encouraging. Now, one of those clearly is the Tees Valley result. The fact that Ben Houchin won in every 5 of the boroughs that sit beneath that mayoral area, I think is very important. It's clearly an area that Labour must win if they are to get the keys to number 10, right at the heart of the Red Wall. And the other result was Harlow, where in fact Keir Starmer went there with Angela Rayner the night before the election for a big rally and made it very clear and very public that in order to get the keys to number 10, Harlow was the kind of council that they had to win, and of course that didn't happen. So I think mixed, of course, and a lot still to do, but the general election will be something different. Maybe we'll come on to this than the local results.
We will, but you know, at the same time, we are on local election night special programme, so we should sort of start with the locals. And look, this isn't my first rodeo. Look, I know when politicians come onto these interviews, you're going to pick the results that tell your narrative, but you're really saying that your two bright spots is Ben Houchin losing 20% of his vote share in Tees Valley and the Conservatives losing 5 seats in Harlow. You say it's a mixed set of results. I mean, what would be a bad set of results? All the candidates been taken out by a meteor?
OK. Well, I made the point about the high water mark in 2021. Of course, then Ben got 73% of the vote. It was astronomical. But if you went back to the first time he got elected, actually, it was down at 40%. So he's considerably advanced, even this time around, on that first election success. So look, I'm not putting any gloss on this. At the end of the day, it's been a tough set of results, and we've got to pick ourselves up and do the right things to make sure we're in the right shape for the general election, because the poll that's really going to matter, as you know, Sophie, is going to be what happens in the general election, and that is a very different kind of contest.
I'm interested when you say you have to do the right thing for the general election, because you know, normally when parties have a bad set of results, you say, you know, that you're listening to what the voters have said. So does that mean you're going to change something as a result of these elections? OK, so the manifesto has yet to be created, and it wouldn't be right for me to opine on what may or may not be within that. But I think what we've got to do as a party, and there's been a lot of talk about unity and whether we're behind the Prime Minister, etc., which we totally are, is we've got to start outward-facing, and we've got to start talking and communicating effectively about the things that we're doing, our record. So getting down inflation from 11 to 3%, getting real wages increasing in each of the last 9 months, tackling those cost of living issues, cutting people's tax. A third off national insurance for employees is a huge tax cut worth £900 for an average earner per year. We're looking at, as you know, migration. We've got our Rwanda bill through, and contrasting that with where Labour is at the moment. Now, where Labour is on the migration, of course, is they've said that the 90,000 plus illegal migrants that are here, they're prepared to effectively look at some kind of soft amnesty style arrangements around that. We've got to get into taking those arguments and battles to Labour. It's going to be easier as the election closer to the election, because what Labour will then have to do is start explaining what their policies are. And at the moment, in many areas like mine, welfare, I have no idea what Labour believes. Just talking again about the Conservative Party, because you know, you're not just losing votes to Labour, you're losing votes to the Green Party, to Independents, to Reform. And just listening to you, it does sound like you're basically just saying you need to communicate the things you're already doing better. You know, is that enough? Voters already know what your policy is on, you know, whether it's, you know, inflation or Rwanda. Voters know that, and they've still rejected you. Are you not going to change anything?
So as we come towards the general election, clearly there will be manifesto commitments that we made and lots of exciting and interesting things that will be said by the Conservative Party at that point. The point that I make is that as we approach that general election, quite rightly, it's going to be framed as the Conservatives versus Keir Starmer. Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer, who's going to get the keys to number 10 and govern the country? And I think at that point, people are going to expect more of Labour in terms of telling us what they actually stand for. We've had this Ming vase strategy, where Keir Starmer has carried this Ming vase, trying to protect his poll lead across this slippery floor for fear of dropping it. OK, that won't last. It won't wash into a general election. So I think we're going to see a very different dynamic going forward. But I do accept that, of course, these results have been difficult, and it pains me that so many great Conservative councillors who've stood up for their communities are now no longer representing those communities.
We've got Richard Tyson on the programme later today. They ran you pretty close second, didn't they, in Blackpool South. What's your strategy for dealing with reform?
Well, there's no doubt that reform is very unlikely to win seats at the next general election under the first past the post
But they could take votes off you.
system.
That's the
Exactly.
thing, right?
So what that therefore leads to is the conclusion that voting for reform is effectively a vote for the Labour Party. Now, you saw that even in Blackpool South, actually, where, you know, there was, as you say, quite a significant, relatively significant poll for reform. But it's not enough. It's nowhere near when you went back to UKIP, for example, in the 2015 or thereabouts, and you looked at what they were doing in by-elections. It was much more impressive.
Maybe if Nigel Farage joins reform or leads reform, it could change.
Who can predict the future on a number of different counts? But I think the main point, and get back to your question, is that when it comes to reform, yes, we've got to address the issues that reform voters are quite rightly vexed by, and immigration is one of them, and I've spoken a little bit about that. But equally, it is just simply the case that under our electoral system, if you're going to vote for reform, I'm afraid you're going to help the Labour Party.
So you're not worried about them?
I didn't say that.
A little bit worried?
I said, well, if we're in a situation where clearly reform is stopping Conservative members of Parliament being elected, and in their place we're getting Labour Party members and a Labour government, then of course that's a concern. But my appeal would be to that come the general election, that those that are thinking of voting that way bear in mind the fact that it is a simple equation. If you vote for reform, you're going to get Labour. Now,
you said that you don't want to predict results, so apologies in advance for this last question. There are a few rumours swirling about what's happening in London, that we could see an upset. What are you picking up?
Right, OK. You're trying to draw me into some kind of speculation,
I
aren't you? I know,
yeah,
and you're brilliant at the way you do it. No, you're quite right. Right, I'm not going to sort of chomp that one all in one bite. Look, I don't know. We have to wait for the results. There are indeed suggestions that it might be tighter than one would imagine. And I think that speaks to an important point here, actually, is that we've had a lot of results so far, but we still have a lot more to come, including, of course, the West Midlands mayoral result as well. So let's wait and see what happens.
But you are picking up rumours that it might be closer than...
I'm only picking up what you're picking up, Sophie, which is that it may or may not be
WhatsApp's exploding, etc., etc.
Well, we don't quite know. What I do know is Sadiq Khan, you know, you've got knife crime going up, you've got ULEZ in the outer boroughs, you've got the war on motorists, you've got loading up, residents
so you didn't
in London.
Vote for Sadiq Khan, though? No.
Strangely, I didn't. Okay. No.
Mel Stride,
anyway,
thank you very much indeed. Mel Stride there, the Work and Pensions Secretary.